What's up, guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. A couple of things we're going to talk about today is going to be things that I get asked about all the time in my store, especially since we do the carry classes. Before we get into that, I'd like to say this is brought to you in part by Roger Fairborn Real Estate. Get yourself a real Roger Fairborn Real Estate. So, we're also going to be talking about the castle doctrine, when and where that comes into play, duty to retreat. Carry guns.
Yep, we had that teaser on the last one for carry guns.
Yes, we want to hear about that too. So there's a lot of we'll get into that in just a second, but there's obviously two camps to just about everything, and I think what carry guns make the best carry guns and optics, etc., is one of those. So the first thing we're going to bring up is the castle doctrine. This is something that any of you that are carrying, or even if you don't carry, and you have your guns for self-defense, home defense, etc., you need to know what you can and can't do at home. So we have what is called the castle doctrine in Maryland, and it's not like Texas where if somebody's standing in your yard and you don't like the way they talk, you can just shoot them and walk back in and finish watching a TV show. Like, it's a little different in Maryland. Maryland, you have to feel like your life is truly in danger. So if someone's standing out there with a cardboard wrapping paper tube saying they're going to kill you with it, and you shoot them and kill them, do not pass go. You're going straight to jail. Congratulations, you're a felon. However, if that person comes running in your doorway at you and you are sitting there watching a movie and you're caught by surprise, you shoot them, you kill them, you're good. However, if you're into an argument face-to-face in the doorway and they start inching their way in, it is your duty to retreat from the situation to try to get help or to de-escalate the situation. What do you mean by that, Chris? So if I'm arguing with somebody in the doorway and it starts to get violent and they talk about killing me, so on and so on and so on, and you have your gun with you or you have one that you have access to, if you're, say, in the living room and you can get to the kitchen, you get to the kitchen, you tell them, if you don't leave, this doesn't stop, I'm going to use deadly force. At that point, you've made a duty to retreat. So if they continue to come at you, you can then use your deadly force. What are you going to do then? You're not going to call your husband, wife, neighbor, friend, none of that. You're going to immediately pick up the phone. You're going to call 911. Throw the phone on the ground. Just use it as a recording device. Hold them there. Tell them you need 2 ambulances. Why do we need 2 ambulances, Craig? Do you know?
No, but you'll tell me.
That second ambulance is for you to sit in so that you cannot be questioned by police. This is where you're going to call your lawyer from Firearms Legal Protection, or who do you use?
I use Armed Citizens Legal Defense.
Both are good. And then we also have another one there that a lot of people like at the store. They're pretty popular as well. Anyway, we have a couple of options. But until that lawyer gets a hold of you or shows up there, you're going to stay in that ambulance so that you cannot be questioned. Not because we're telling you did anything wrong, but because it just keeps you from saying anything they can use against you. So
you just want to say the bare minimum that you have to say. You know, I had a self-defense shooting. I felt my life was in jeopardy. And
yep.
Say the bare minimum and then, get yourself medically checked and try to get a lawyer to sit with you when you make those statements.
If you are carrying and you carry every day, I tell everybody, the class is 16 hours long. Really, the class could be taught in 2 or 3, but they make us do 16. So by the end of it, my tax return and everything else, they were going to try to make it 40 hours. So hopefully that never passes, because I'll just be done doing classes at that point, because then I'll be married to the people by the end of it. But anyway, if you are carrying, I tell everybody, just in the back of your mind, they throw all this information at you you're supposed to remember. And there's no way people that are new at this, that just want to exercise their most basic of rights to defend themselves, are going to remember all this information. So I tell everybody, were you afraid for your life, and could you get out of the situation? If those 2 things are met, chances are you're going to be okay.
Well, I think the biggest thing is like, if you're going to have a jury of your peers, are they going to find that you exercised good judgment and had like the right call? would they have done the same thing in your situation? If
Right.
the answer is yes, I think you're covered.
And that judgment, I mean, you're making that judgment call like that, which is why I tell people to, unfortunately, you have to run these scenarios through your head, especially living where we do in Hagerstown. I mean, crime has skyrocketed a ton. I don't know the exact stats. I wish I would have looked them up now that I said that. But I mean, we've got carjackings now. I mean, they used to only be in the movies. People kicking people's doors in, like not even 2 miles from here in the middle of the day to rob them. So, I mean, you unfortunately have to be prepared for this stuff. But our castle doctrine states that you do have a duty to retreat from the situation. But if you are in your home, and I don't care if it's a trailer, tent, home, wherever you live, you don't have to leave that residence or wherever it is that you stay to get out of the situation. So, I mean, once you've gone from one room to the other safely, you know, if you couldn't get to another room to retreat safely, there is no retreat, use your deadly force. So that our castle doctrine is a little weird in that way where, again, in Texas, you can blast them right in the doorway if they threaten you. You can't do that here. I mean, you've really got to be on top of this stuff because there is a group out there and their sole purpose in life is to look at these situations and these shootings and try to pin you for whatever they can. So that's why I tell people not to put things on their carry guns like let it rain, F this and F that, because they'll use all those little things against them. Oh, you're a gun-toting redneck. You wanted to kill somebody. People carrying 2 or 3 mags on them. And even then, I'm looking at them like, why in the hell do you need all those? Oh, it's my right. I'm like, yeah, but if you need any more than 1 extra mag to get out of a situation, you're an idiot. Like, we're not in a shootout. It's not Fallujah. You just need to get out of the situation.
Somebody breaking into somebody's house is an extremely dangerous event. So, I mean, everybody's going to handle things differently. You could have a single mom with children at home who becomes more fearful versus maybe you or I who might be able to handle the situation slightly different. You know, because I'm not necessarily just going to shoot somebody to shoot them. But if I see some type of deadly force that's needed, then yes, I'm going to protect myself and my family.
Yeah.
But if I can get away with it, I'm going to try not to shoot them.
Oh, it's definitely a last resort. And then even if you do, one of the questions I asked all the students in my class when we do the carry class is, how many times can you legally shoot somebody in the state of Maryland in a self-defense shooting? And all the time I get people that are like, 3, 2, 6. I'm like, no, it's however many times it takes to cease the threat. But to unload your entire gun on somebody, like if you're in a store and there's a robbery.
Taqueria shooting in Texas.
What's that?
That taqueria shooting in Texas.
That was crazy. But to unload your whole mag, if you do that, and then they've got a watch out person or a friend or a brother or sister or whatever outside with a gun, and they run in to see what's going on, and you've unloaded your whole gun. Now you're caught with your pants down. Now you're the target. So that's why I tell everybody you've got to mentally always prepare yourself for that, to not unload the entire gun just because you want to make sure the threat's not a threat anymore. And 9 out of 10 times, 1 to 3 shots is going to take care of the situation, unless they're all jacked up on some kitchen meth. And I mean, there have been situations where cops have had to unload a whole mag to get a perpetrator to go down, but I mean, that's few and far between. But I think the stats that they put out last year was 90% of all people that used a firearm or just showing the firearm ended the confrontation, and then out of those, only 10% actually had to fire a shot or something like that.
It's like John Correa says on active self-protection, man. You put the quarter in the jukebox, you get to dance the tune. Because you don't know. They might not have a lot of training.
What the hell does that mean?
They're the ones that started it. They're the ones that decided to break into the home. So if you accidentally put a mag in them, then you put a mag in them.
I mean, put a mag in them.
No one's fault but themselves.
I wouldn't put the whole mag in them just in case there's a watch out and they're coming in going, oh, hey, what happened to Johnny? Why is he laying on the floor in blood? Did you shoot him? Bang, bang. You're out of ammo.
I mean, people just, they get scared sometimes. And
I get it, and that's
You
what I'm
know?
saying, and that's 1,000% understandable. But apparently, that 14-year-old kid in Kentucky held his ground.
We'll talk about that in another one. But it was like there was a kid that was in. I was PCSing to a different unit when I was in the Army, and that unit had went to Panama, even though Panama was only, a few days long. They actually saw combat, and everybody in the 60 on top of the Humvee. They're usually like your E1s. Well, never seen combat or anything like that, and he had to engage a target, and he just held down and just like put the whole belt in him. I mean, sometimes you just like
And
freeze.
one person?
Yeah. So I mean,
Jeez.
things happen. When you get adrenaline or you get scared, and things happen. So you might put a few extra rounds in somebody, and hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. An M60 all into one person, but yeah. No. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to bring up, since carjacking seemed to be the thing now, that's like the new fad. When you are in your vehicle, that becomes your castle. And there's these morons out there that are doing these, what do they call it, the road shutdown, or what do they call it? They have, where all these kids that think they're race car drivers all get together and they shut the roads down. Anyway, if you morons are watching it, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, with the people that are stuck in some of those situations, these people have gotten violent with them just for trying to drive through and get from point A to point B or go from work to home. And, it doesn't matter what they're doing to the car. They can beat your headlights in, smash the fender. Now, there could be an argument if they're trying to disable the vehicle to get it to stop to trap you there, that you could use the car then as a self-defense situation and just drive through these morons, which is what I hope would happen more, but, only if it's self-defense. But the second they break that glass, or if they open a door, you can then use your gun. But not until they have broken the glass or opened the door. It's very important you people know that, because we just watched some video of some moron driving down the road in a road rage situation, and I guess the other guy driving past him threw a water bottle at him, and this moron unloaded his whole gun through the windshield at this car driving by while he was driving. So those are the people that I'm terrified that are getting their carry permits that just shouldn't have them. And it only takes one of them to make us all look absolutely terrible. But
You have to have a good
unfortunately,
head on your shoulders.
yeah, it's a lot of responsibility. It truly is. I know people think that sounds tacky, or the whole Spider-Man thing, like I said in the last one, but like it really is a lot of responsibility. And there's a lot of morons out there. I mean, on both sides, it's just morons. The guy over in the bar in Funkstown, was it last year? Year before last?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, there was a fight between the two of them inside. They got it broken up, put the one guy behind the bar. The other guy went outside. Well, the guy that went outside was a valid carry permit holder. So the idiot goes to his truck and gets his gun. Instead of just getting in his truck and leaving, goes to his truck, gets his gun to walk back to the bar, which you can't have your gun in to begin with because they serve and you drink alcohol there. And the guy comes out with a knife that they got broken up that was behind the bar. They come together on the sidewalk, get into it again. The guy shoots him and kills him. That's a valid permit carrier. Now he's sitting in prison. When the moron could have just got in his truck, drove away, been done. It's people like that that make all of us just look terrible. There was an older guy that was a cop for 20, 30 years, whatever, 5, 6 years ago, over near the Lowe's at Wise, and geese were chasing him. So he decided he was going to unload his handgun in the parking lot of Wise, where Lowe's is over there.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I remember that.
it only takes a couple guys like that to make everything terrible. So I know one of the things you wanted to ask everybody on this one, since we're coming up on our time here, was what carry guns they were using.
Well, it's not necessarily what carry gun that you're using. My thing was, do you have a manual safety or don't you?
Oh, shit.
That's kind of.
Shit. You're going to open up a can of
That's kind of
worms
what
on that.
I know if you've got a 1911, and I'm sure the majority of you out there that are carrying the compact 1911s in single action are definitely forced to have a safety. I mean,
But that's different. So the safeties on those are, I don't want to say like flunky, like they're just big and you can mistakenly turn those on. But I get so many people come in the shop that go crazy talking about how much they hate safeties. And I'm like, what? If you don't like it, just keep the damn thing off. But I feel like if more guns had regular safeties on them, we'd have a lot less accidents. Like, I don't see the issue with having a safety on a gun. Oh, well, Chris, it's one more thing you got to think about if you got to pull your gun out in a self-defense situation. Well, yeah, duh. There's a lot more you got to think about other than that. And if you're practicing with it, the mechanics of it, as you're drawing it, the first thing you need to do is turn safety off. If you're practicing with the gun like you're supposed to be, then the mechanics are to bring your thumb down and turn the safety off as you pull it up. But I get so many of my friends that just, I'm not buying that gun. It has a safety on it. I'm like, what?
Hey, guess what? I'm the same.
I know, and I don't get it. Like, that's so, it's crazy to me that people.
Why would I want a safety? I don't need a safety.
Why don't you?
Because I don't want I don't want to learn a whole different manual of arms. I don't practice with a safety. I don't want a safety.
That's my point. But if somebody does, then they practice with people like, oh, I don't like that gun because they don't offer it without a safety. And I'm like, okay, idiot, leave it off. You know what I mean? Like, come on, really? Like, people will use that as an excuse not to like a gun that's absolutely amazing because they don't make it without a safety. Personally, if I was a manufacturer, I wouldn't make one without a safety.
Well, I tend to like hammer fire guns, and I prefer all my hammer fire guns to have a decocker, and that decocker acts as my safety. If I have a striker fire gun, it can't have a safety.
Okay, so yeah, you bring up a good point. I love hammer guns Walther P99. That's why I love it so much. It's got the button on the top where it becomes the decocker. Now the gun's in double action mode, and it's got, 8-9 pound trigger on it. So you're not accidentally setting that off unless you truly meant to. There's also no hammer on the back to snatch with anything. It is a hammer, striker fire, decocker, kind of all in one. If more manufacturers would jump on that, it'd be freaking amazing. But it's too complicated for their little heads.
And striker fire is the most popular thing out there. And that's what I'm curious. If you own a striker fired handgun, do you have a safety? Do you not have a safety? I want to know. I mean, I have a Canic sitting right here, no safety. I have a P365 that I carry. The 365 doesn't have a safety. I will not have a safety.
So the striker fire revolvers is a really good option too, because then you get double action trigger, but it's still striker fired, no hammer. So you're getting like the best of everything. So we have those two there. I know Smith & Wesson makes one. Somebody else makes one. I can't remember who it was. Had one a while back. I don't think it was Taurus. I guess it could have been. Anyway, so what do you guys like? What don't you like? And if you're going to tell me that you carry a 50 Desert Eagle just to sound cool, just stay out of the comments. We don't need that shit. I hate that. People are like, oh yeah, my carry gun's a 50 Desert Eagle. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're a moron. You're part of what's wrong with the entire 2A thing and why we're constantly defending ourselves. Because if you've got that mindset, God knows what else you're doing.
Well, I have that CZ Shadow 2 compact. I haven't carried that yet, but I've never engaged the safety. I mean, if we're in a situation where we have to pull that firearm, you're only pulling that firearm if you absolutely need to use it. You legitimately have a reason. I do not need a safety.
80% of these people that are going to pull that firearm in a defense situation, they've never been in that situation, so they're not going to be themselves. Adrenaline's going to be going hard. You know, they're not going to be thinking quite like they are, not thinking, but they're not going to be rationalizing the way that they should. And chances are it's going to be one of these things where they're pulling it up. I'll shoot you, I'll shoot you, I'll shoot you. And if you've got an extremely light trigger and no safety, like, the gun's good, and it accidentally goes off, and guess what? You didn't meet all the criteria for a self-defense situation. Now, congratulations, you're a felon because you had to have a match trigger on a carry gun. So, okay, that's another thing that we argue about a lot, is people wanting these 3-pound triggers on carry guns. I think that's the dumbest thing on the face of the planet.
I mean, if you get lucky and you have to pull that weapon and all of a sudden, like, they had a knife and they're like, fuck no, I don't want any part of this, and drop that knife real quick, okay, that problem solved.
But as you're pulling it and it goes off because you had a 3-pound trigger and no safety and you shot the person, and
they were still a deadly threat.
I don't know how that's going to hold up with witnesses around. He
I mean,
was
if
pulling
you
the
tell
gun
him you
out and it went
accidentally-
off as I pulled it up.
If you
You're
accidentally
done.
fired it, you might be in trouble.
But you see what, like, so, okay, I see where you're saying with the safety thing, okay? I get some of it. I still don't fully agree with it, but I get it. If you've practiced enough and you're proficient with it, fine. But having a 2.5, 3-pound trigger on a carry gun is idiotic. Well, first of all, if you go modifying it after the fact and something does happen, then the manufacturer gets out of being held accountable, even if it is an accident. So you've screwed yourself there as well.
I mean, I prefer a 3 to 3.5 pound trigger on a carry gun,
Why?
just for the accuracy potential.
Yeah, but most self-defense shootings are going to happen within 20 feet.
Yeah, but if I have to fire quick, I want those shots on target.
And you don't think they'd be on target with a 4.5, 5-pound trigger instead of a 3?
Could be a low left. You never know.
Oh, okay. Well,
But it's just like you were
hit
saying
their leg
earlier.
before
Like
you hit
if
the
somebody
torso.
is pulling and they're shaking and everything else, that disengaging the safety is just one more step.
So,
And I've seen videos. Did you see I don't know. This happened years ago. Guy was in a grocery store, and a person was robbing him, and he was in a checkout lane, pulled it, and brought it up, and went to squeeze the trigger, and nothing happened.
nope, that wasn't because he forgot to turn the safety off.
It was.
That was actually because, nope, it was a compact 1911, and when he went to pull it up, he pushed it up into the slide and couldn't get it to do anything. So, but that's what I mean with practice.
Okay, same thing.
So
man. The
these
safety malfunction.
people are buying these guns, throwing it wherever, and never practicing with it unless they need it.
Yes, don't
I mean,
throw it in your sock drawer and never use it.
You know, like
Practice.
women, do not buy your gun. You know, buy it for carry and then throw it in the freaking black hole of death you call a purse. It's not going to do you any good there. It's crazy. You know how many women come in and they're like, oh yeah, I need to get a holster for this, and hang on, let me find it. You know,
Well, that's
here's
why-
lipstick from 1998. You know,
I'm curious, like what we get on the feedback here, because if you have children in the home, that could be a pro for safety.
it should be on some kind of lock anyway.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, even if it's a really quick 2-second safe, you know, it needs to be, yeah. Because now we're not going to get into this. Actually, we're at our 20 minute mark here, so we're going to let you go. But keep in mind, for those of you that have kids and your guns are near your kids, the new law that actually just came into play last year, if your kid goes out and does something with any of your guns, it's as if you were the one that went and pulled the trigger. So look up the Safety Storage Act. So anyway, anything else you want to touch base on before we go?
no, that's it.
All right. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.
Adios.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's podcast. I know we had a little bit of a gap there, leap year. Anyway, things are back to normal. We will be putting one out every weekend at this point. So we are going to keep them shorter for you ADD people like me. A couple of topics we're going to touch on today. The first one is a pretty exciting one. Mr. Kash Patel has taken over as ATF director. Those of you that are not familiar with who he is a Republican, and he was the attorney that helped Trump in his defense with all of the illegal search and seizures of his property during his last presidency and post-presidency and so on and so on. Craig's going to touch more on that. But I guess first we're going to start off with the Snope versus Brown. Where are we at on that?
All right, we had scheduled for conference on Friday. Haven't heard any more updates since then. The last thing that it showed in the system was that it was scheduled for conference, so we may know what happened probably Monday, Tuesday, this coming week. Hopefully, they decide to pick it up, even though it's going to be a while before they hear it. But this is a major case, not just for Maryland, but for the entire country. So definitely hope that this thing gets picked up.
What in the hell takes them so long anyway? To go from, hey, here's our issue, will you hear this? Like, we have to ask them permission to hear our issues, or are there just so many fucking issues out there that they decide what they're going to pick up and what they're not?
There are thousands of cases that they can choose to take up. So if they've already taken up so many Second Amendment related cases, they may pass. So it just depends. This has major implications nationwide. So I think even though we have a president that hasn't been 2A friendly in the past, that has changed their tune supposedly, you know, I'm still jury's out on that. I would have think that just because some states are anti-Second Amendment, I think that they need to take this up. Even if they do other legislation in the meantime, they still need to take this up.
Who in the hell determines what's important enough to take? I meant to ask you this earlier in the week. Like, who in the hell determines what's important and what's not? Like, hey, you're going to hear this, but not hear this. Do they base it on, like, if it doesn't fit their political agenda, they just don't hear it? Or if they think it's going to hurt the political arena, do they push it off till a better time? Like, who the hell decides that?
Well, they do. The justices sit down and decide that for themselves.
So old people in black robes determine our rights as to what we can and can't do. Awesome.
Well, okay. The cases that they choose to take up during that session. But I think that we have a lot of pro 2A justices on there. So there's a very good likelihood that we will see it.
Kash Patel, pretty awesome dude.
Yeah.
Yesterday, appointed director, interim of the ATF. Everybody can clap now. If you're sitting alone, still clap with both hands, not one.
I like the fact that they're not leaving it up to interim people in that agency in order to cover in the acting role. That, you know, he is going to oversee it just to make sure that things aren't going sideways there.
So he's running the ATF and the FBI at the same time, which I don't see why somebody can't run both of those organizations, since the ATF is just a made-up fucking organization anyway, that really all they should be doing is monitoring the border for drug traffickers, because there's plenty there. I mean, most of what they do other than that is just harass U.S. citizens. But, okay, I can see if someone's building illegal machine guns or bombs. Awesome. Go after them. You know, have at it. But to come after some dude that's been buying guns for 50 years because he got a serial number wrong somewhere and threatened to arrest him, bust his doors down, search his whole house and confiscate everything is a load of bullshit. Like, I don't even see how anybody's okay with that. I mean, I know the blue hair unicorn fairies that are screaming for Harris to be reelected probably see it, but, you know, would they want us going in there and running up into their house and jacking their hair dye? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, what is the point other than them monitoring to make sure we don't have terrorists or drug dealers coming over the border? At what point did it become ATF money grabbing association to take our guns and to push others' political agendas as they want? Like, I've never understood that. I know it's before my time when it started, but it seems like it didn't get really bad until the 80s, 90s.
Well, I think even Ronald Reagan had some things in there that weren't too great for gun control. So having that agency at the will of whatever president is in office is not right. I mean, we need to follow the Constitution of the United States, period.
That's what I mean, political agenda.
Yeah. So that I think they're working on trying to fix that and keep that from happening, but we might need some legislation and limit the ability of the ATF in order to not be able to have carte blanche in all this rulemaking. So once that, I think, is taken away from them,
Yeah.
it'll be better.
So that's the thing. Rulemaking and lawmaking is they got a God complex from hell. And they felt like when they made up a rule, that rule was law, and what they said was law. That's where that entire organization started to lose its way. And then the other thing that pisses me off is when I would have one of the ATF folks come into the shop and do, like, when we move to get an inspection, or they just want to check inventory, blah, 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 whatever, I get a different answer from all of them. You can ask all the ATF reps the same question, and you'll get a different answer from all of them. So, like, when, we got our '07 FFL, the one girl that came up, there's a whole load of bullshit with that, but she's like, oh, you need this special book, and it has to have this, this, and this. So when we just had our re-inspection, I got a different ATF rep, and I said, look, hey, we're digital now, but our digital system doesn't have a place for this, and I was told last time that she's pretty much going to hog tie me and carry me out of here in cuffs if I don't do this with this book, but this system, which you guys authorized, does not have this on it. She's like, oh, I never heard of that. That's not a thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. The other girl who acted like she hated me just because she had to wake up this morning had all the issues in the world if I didn't have this. And now you're telling me it's not a big deal. I don't need that. So, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, you get, and that's not the first time that's happened. You get a different answer from these people all the time on the most simplest of questions. So, yeah, I mean, that's what you're saying, like making rules and just off of the whim, and all of a sudden that's law. That's bullshit.
Well, Dettelbach is gone, and most all this nasty stuff happened under Biden and Dettelbach. But it's like they don't even care about the rules that have already been decided that weren't right, like the pistol brace.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an instance not too long ago where somebody wrote into them saying that they were buying a CZ, I think it was a Scorpion, I'm not positive on what model it was, but wanted to know whether or not that would be a SBR if they put it on, and they came back and basically were like, yeah. And then they had to come back later on after Gun Owners of America had petitioned them or sent them some correspondence wanting a clarification on it, because I think they were ready to take them to task because it was a violation of the court orders. And they came back and said, yeah, it was can't remember the term, overreach or something.
Overreach was the term. And what was hilarious about that is I watched the video of the senators grilling the ATF director. This guy is so fucking out there, like, knew nothing about guns. Here's the dude running the entire organization that literally knows nothing about guns that said those pistol braces should be illegal because they made the bullets faster and they made the gun more accurate. I'm like, okay, faster, you're an idiot, and more accurate, I would hope so, because then, if you're trying to shoot this, I'm not accidentally going to hit that. So, I mean, where's your argument at here, you moron? Like, did you watch? It was a whole thing where they were blasting him.
It's not an argument. There are, I'm going to say, probably 60 to 70% of the country probably are not gun owners. They're not familiar with how things work on the firearm side. So if you go and espouse all kinds of falsehoods, I mean, they're going to believe that because you're should be knowing what you're talking about.
The amount of blue hairs out there that think that what is a machine gun is not, like, it's insane. So when somebody says AR-15, well, why does anybody need an AR-15? Because I'm a fucking American and I want one, first of all. But secondly, the trigger pulls just the same as a hunting rifle from the 1970s. Okay, it looks like a Browning, 30-06, semi-automatic. Remington, Semi-automatic, 30-06. All of those guns, M1, are all way more powerful than a 223. And you could shoot them just as fast. And they're, well, let's see here. Yeah, more than 3 times. Yeah, 2.5, 3 times. Size-wise and energy-wise as to what a 223 is putting out. And they're not machine guns because they look like a hunting rifle. But because the rifle that shoots exactly the same with a bullet that's almost 3 times smaller looks mean and scary, all of a sudden it's mean and scary. And that's, yeah, you get enough people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. And all of these people that also don't know what the hell they're talking about start spouting off at the mouth like the morons at these colleges and stuff. And now you have all this disinformation out there, which is why people like Brandon Herrera want to get in on the ATF to kind of straighten it up / slice it down, I guess. Yeah.
Well, if you tell enough lies often enough, I mean, people are going to believe it if you keep saying it over and over. So, I mean, back to this ATF for Cash overseeing it. I wanted to also touch on real briefly, I had taken some notes, that Pam Bondi fired Pamela Hicks on Thursday, and she was the one who opposed the pistol brace rule and the 80% lowers. So she was the one that went after that stuff.
So it's possible that, okay, do you think it's possible that those could come back around eventually, years down the road, to try to get them approved again? Or do you think once it's done, it's done?
No, anything can happen. Things change over time. I mean, we could get back into a liberal government again, and we want to control things more. But the fact that they're violating what's out there already and
now,
trying to go after this stuff, they got rid of her. But I marked down Regina Lombardo and Deputy Marvin Richardson. They were the top 2 in favor of the ban. Joel Rossner and James Van also were, I think, lead counsels on that. So, I mean, get rid of them all.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that wants to violate your rights, get rid of them.
But going back to the 80% thing, I'm going to catch a bunch of shit on this. But I'm very pro 2A, obviously. But I personally feel like the 80% world was one of the dumbest things for the 2A community to even put out there as a thing. And I know people are going to argue to death with me about this, but first of all, you've got people building guns that aren't gunsmiths, and it's a proven fact. There's so many people that hurt themselves trying to build these things, thinking they knew what they were doing. More importantly, I was at a gun show with my son 4 years ago maybe, and we're looking at these 2 young kids with backpacks on at this gun show, and there's this girl running the booth, and they're picking out what slide they want and what lower and this barrel and these parts and blah, blah, blah. Kids didn't even look like they were 16, 17 years old. No ID, no nothing. As long as they had the money, they bought their stuff and away they went. So I walked up to the lady and obviously told her I had an issue with it. And there was a lawyer there, obviously a pro 2A lawyer at the gun show, that was just giving me a bunch of shit. So him and I got into an argument. And I said, do you have any kids in school? Obviously you don't, because I do. And it's not that I am anti-2A, I am pro-common sense. And the second you start allowing 16 and 17 and 14-year-olds to build their own guns with a drill press at home, and they decide they don't like so-and-so at school, they're playing video games every single day that devalue human life, and now their girlfriend breaks up, or this person bullied, blah, 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 walk cross street to the gun show, get what you need to build a gun, take it into school the next day, we're off to the races. Now it's an issue for you, me, and everybody else. So I feel like the 80% thing, and I think a lot of the people that had the most issue with the 80% were the guys that either wanted to hide their guns because they didn't want them serialized, and for whatever reason they didn't want anybody to know they had them, or people that couldn't buy guns, or underage people that couldn't buy guns, that were all the biggest proponents to allowing them. But I don't know. I feel like the 80% world, 70% world, whatever. I think all of that was a terrible idea from the get-go. Pistol brace, that was just stupid to try to take them away. I mean, honestly, I mean, even with just a regular pistol buffer tube on there, you can hold it the same way as you would with or without the pistol brace. So I don't see what their issue there was with giving us a hard time about those.
I don't think that they're going to win that. That's in
No,
common use.
they're not going to. I don't see how they could. But anyway, just
80% lower. You know, I disagree with you. No, we shouldn't be selling stuff that is firearm related to somebody below the age of 18. But the government doesn't need to know what people have, period. They don't need a registry. They don't need a list. If somebody wants to get one without it going through a 4473, that's their right. Who am I to say no?
Personally, yes. But at some point, as gun owners and pro 2A people, we have to take a little bit of responsibility with the way times have changed and say, yeah, okay, you know what? This might be a violation here or there, but this is how things are now versus what they were then. So if so-and-so is doing this or that, then we should know if they have more guns at home. You know, like I don't see how anybody could possibly have an issue with that. That's of any common sense. Like I said, I'm sure it'll spark some controversy. I don't care. I personally, as a gunsmith, have issues with 80%ers for more reason than one. I can't tell you how many people that have come in that have almost literally killed themselves trying to get these things to work because they have no clue what they're doing.
That's on them. But
it is until you're at the range next to one of these idiots and that thing goes full auto and he loses control and takes you or your wife out. You know what I mean? Because there was nobody there to regulate the gun build to see if it was being done properly.
I don't think there's very many instances of that happening.
Oh, absolutely there is. Absolutely there is.
It goes to the same thing. You go up to the range that I do, and you have these old guys up there who don't believe in an AR and don't think you should have an AR. It's the same mentality.
Yeah, right.
It's like, let people do what people do.
But the 80% thing, I was all about them until that gun show. And that completely changed my tune on them altogether. Because we've got so many foreign people that are coming into the country now with a ton of money that are able to buy all these things, and they don't care. They just want to make as much money as possible. They're not going to take any responsibility to say, you know what, I probably shouldn't sell that person a gun. I probably shouldn't sell these kids a lower and a slide. They don't have that mentality, so they're just going to do it. And yes, it might be on that person, but if you got cash transactions, nobody's ever going to be able to walk it back to them. And the people that are screaming at me right now from the screen and are all pissed off about everything I'm saying, if one of those situations or one of those kids or one of these people that went in and bought one of these or did something to somebody they loved, I promise you their tune would change. Okay. So we have rights and we have responsibility. It's like fucking Spider-Man. And at some point, the two of those have to commingle. And I think if I'm going to give anything up as far as my rights, you know, to tell me that I can't have this gun or that gun in Maryland, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard of in my life. Okay,
fuck off.
Here's a good
shit.
Exactly. Well, but here's the thing. As I own a gun store, so unfortunately I have to abide by these idiots' rules. But so with an Aero Precision lower, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you, and then Maryland's going to be like, oh yeah, we didn't think about that. Let's fuck them again. So you know what? I'm going to let that one go because I'm not going to tell them what I know where they fucked up and then they turn around and use that against us because you're like, oh, you found a loophole, huh? Yeah, we did, and it's 1,000% legal. So there's a certain type of gun, certain lower that you can't have this upper on, but yet another company makes the same exact lower and I can put that upper on that lower and that's legal. That just goes to show you how big of fucking idiots these people are that are in charge of that stuff. Like literally, I can put a 2.2, or I cannot have a 2.23 Wild on an M4 E1 lower, but I can have a 5.56 on it, which is more pressure, more powerful. You see what I'm saying? Like
these are
people,
legislators that are coming up with this.
They don't know anything about guns.
No.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. But I mean, no, this is our state. Yeah. We're so far out in left field picking daisies, like we don't even know the fucking game is being played. These people are morons, dude. It's insane.
All right.
Anyway,
Let's
yeah,
wrap
we'll
it
get
up.
off that subject because that just pisses me off.
Yeah, let's just wrap it up. Let's see, in the comments what you guys think as far as the 80% lowers go. Weigh in. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm a dick to most of y'all, but some of you are going to get it, especially if you have kids.
Yep. I don't believe that there should be any compromises. That's why I'm a member of Gun Owners of America.
No, I get it. There has to be some compromise at some point, though.
No.
I mean, back then, the technology didn't exist that exists today.
Oh my God.
That makes it so easy for these kids to, we're not going to get into it. Anyway, the last thing we want to talk about before we end this podcast is Craig wanted to bring up what your carry pistols are. We want to know what everybody's
We'll
carrying.
do that in the next one.
We've already opened that can of worms now.
No, so stay tuned for the next one.
All right. Take care. Have a good night.
Oh, one other thing. Point of business. Let's come up with a name for the podcast.
Yeah, if any of you guys, I know we asked a couple people on Facebook. We did get some cool ones. A lot of those were patent, though, guys. There's other podcasts out there that have those names already. We're having a terrible time with this.
The ones that were good, that are viable, let's put them out there and let them decide which one they want.
And this podcast is brought to you in part by CC Firearms, where we hands down have the best guns. Good night.